Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Why, this ancient civilization abandoned gold. Let's explore. Believe it or not all empires or civilizations or nation states embraced gold way back in the day. And we're going to be talking about what happened with this ancient civilization that did embrace it but then abandoned it. This is an article that comes to us from Smithsonian Magazine, as shared with me by one Doctor Who, why this ancient civilization fell out of love with gold for 700 years. And this is an interesting story indeed. 4,000 years ago, the finest gold items on Earth belonged to the nomadic groups that roamed the mountainous lands between the Black and Caspian Seas. These communities herded animals for a living, but they also mastered gold working long before most societies. Their elites flaunted that bling, especially in their tombs, which were loaded with golden goblets, such as the one I showed you there. We'll see it again here momentarily. Jewelry and other treasures. Word of this gold-rich land spread and spawned fall tales from faraway lands, like the ancient Greek myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece. In most versions of the legend, the hero and the crew brave a perilous journey to retrieve a magical ram's gold-colored wool from Colchis, which is today the country of Georgia, in the Caucasus Mountains. But according to new research published by Scientific Reports, gold fell out of fashion in the Caucasus and remained unpopular for at least 700 years. Analyzing more than 4,500 artifacts discovered by archaeologists over the past 130 years, a researcher showed that gold items became rare across a large swath of the territory between 1500 and 800 BC. The locals seem to have decided then that gold was gaudy. Amazing. Yes, indeed. So that they were rare, found they couldn't find them, I guess. So these days we understand that gold is rare, but more of it's been pulled out of the ground in the last century than ever before in history. But regardless, this paper is important because it reminds us that our values are not universal. Even something we tend to regard as a global commodity, that is gold, the allure of gold, is not universal in space and time, says Cambridge professor Marcos Martinon Torres, an expert on ancient metals who was not involved in the research. And that shift may reflect more than fashion whims. The archaeologist behind the research, Nathaniel Erb Satullo of Cranfield University in the UK, thinks the gold decline resulted from elites losing status. Perhaps average folks decried the one percenters of the day, and ostentatious markers of wealth like gold ornaments went out of style. Down with the rich and their riches. I guess that could be the case. I'm not saying that it was totally flat society hierarchy, explains Erb Satullo, but he sees a turn away from the glorification of the individual person and the research he's done. That's pretty interesting. Erb Satullo's studies began as an offhanded observation. In the mid-2010s, while working on an archaeological digs in Georgia, he would visit regional museums in his spare time. He would gawk at their collections of exquisite gold artifacts, but began to notice a gap in the ages of these items. The exhibits showcase lovely early gold, mostly made between 2500 and 1500 BC. They say BCE there, but you cannot take Christ out of our dating system, no matter how hard they try. This is during the Bronze Middle Age. They also displayed relics from 800 to 200 BC, when classical Greeks explored the region and concocted the tale of Jason and the Golden Fleece. But Erb Satullo rarely spied artifacts from the intervening period, 1500 to 800 BC, during the late Bronze and early Iron Ages. Chatting with Georgian colleagues, he learned that others had casually noted this apparent gold gap, but no one had seriously investigated it. Possibly metalsmiths did craft gold during the late Bronze and early Iron Ages, but archaeologists haven't yet discovered the sites where it's buried. However, Herb Satulo was intrigued by an alternative explanation. Communities in the Caucasus might have lost their gold lust for nearly 1,000 years. To determine if the apparent gap signified a real drop in gold working, he decided to build a database of all known gold artifacts from the southern Caucasus, which date between 4000 and 500 BC. That meant searching beyond the flashy items in museum displays. In 2019, he began scouring published reports from archaeological digs that occurred in present-day Georgia, Armenia, as Azerbaijan, from the late 1800s onwards. By late 2020, his database comprised of 89 sites and 4,555 gold objects, including cups, figurines, beads, and fragments of gold sheet, which likely covered wood objects that decomposed long ago. Herb Satulo charted how these artifacts counts varied across time by geographic zone and based on the site's distance from gold ore deposits. The casual observations made that Georgian museums rarely had gold items from between 1500 and 800 BC reflected a real decline in gold working during that time. Specifically, the drop occurred in the so-called Middle Kura zone, the northeast corner of the region. Middle Kura sites dated between 2500 and 1500 BC, yielding a whopping 1209 gold items, but the count plummeted to just 29 objects in the next period, 1500 to 800 BC. That's despite the fact that archaeologists have excavated thousands of graves from the latter period. These burials contain fine items crafted from bronze, carnelian, and other precious materials. Gold was just conspicuously rare. Meanwhile, gold counts remained high at sites outside of the zone to the south. These communities continued packing their tombs with gold splendor as Middle Kuru groups eschewed the metal. The study brought tons of data together to really make the case that some people in this one particular area were actually choosing not to engage or choosing to reject the previous technology, says Catherine Freeman, an archaeologist at the Australian National University who served as a peer reviewer of the study. It's difficult to know why these communities rejected the lustrous metal embraced by their predecessors, neighboring contemporaries, and local successors. They left no written records explaining this turn. Writing didn't yet exist in the Caucasus region, but Herb Satulo gleaned clues from the other archaeological remains which indicate social transformations during the Bronze and Iron Ages, when gold working peaks between about 2500 and 1500 BC. Evidence of permanent settlements in the southern Caucasus is sparse. Most communities seem to have been nomadic herders. Some members of these groups apparently attained high status and wealth, based on the size and contents of their tombs, located in constructed mounds that could span a football field in diameter to reach 30 feet high. These nomadic elites were definitely decked out with wealth, says Herb Satulo. It's when these massive burial mounds appear that we start to see the first real kind of social hierarchy emerge. But around 1500 BC, lifestyles and preferences changed. More groups settled into villages, often protected by hilltop fortresses. Graves became more modest compared to the enormous mounds of prior generations, and gold bling nearly disappeared from Middle Kura zone. It's unlikely that artisans depleted their natural supply of gold. The southern Caucasus holds more than 100 known gold deposits. Nearly all the archaeological sites in the study were within 2 days' walk from one or more of these sources, based on Herb Satulo's estimates by foot travel time across the rugged terrain. Plus prolific and sophisticated gold working reappears in the Middle Kura zone towards the end of the first millennium BC. There's no indication the area experienced a gold shortage. Together, these clues suggest that upper class scaled back their most egregious displays of wealth. The social hierarchy may have leveled somewhat, or perhaps high status individuals just quit flaunting their riches. Either way, the societal turn against gold was unique to Middle Kruger residents. Groups outside this zone continued buying their dead with gold bling, burying their dead with gold bling. Beyond the Caucasus, the study adds to understanding of the global history of technology and innovation, like metalworking. It provides a rare example in what a society decided to abandon technology that they had developed and embraced centuries before. The reason such cases are rare, it's hard to study the rejection of innovations. It's hard to study people who aren't doing things because, by definition, the evidence isn't there. When scholars only focus on successful innovations, they make it seem like technology invariably advances in a linear progression from simple to complex, from sticks and stones to iPhones. But 3,500 years ago, in the Caucasus, communities decided to abandon the cutting-edge industry of gold working. So according to Martinon Torres, their choice shows the history of technology is not even linear. It's much richer and much more colorful, with ebbs and flows that vary depending on the individual social and cultural context. Speaking of technology, imagine if all the satellites just were destroyed in space. Where would we be? Could we have survived? We'd certainly be taking steps backwards indeed. Technology is not just a linear thing. It could regress in some cases, in some ways, for multiple different reasons. And I think there's multiple lessons to be had from this article and from sharing this. So thanks again to Dr. Who for sharing it with me. I know it was long. Thanks for putting up with the reading of it, but I think it was important to go through all the different aspects of this. I want to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.